morning and welcome to MENA Mentors, the weekly podcast that shapes entrepreneurs in the MENA region. The podcast will be hosted by Sasha Christie and Luka Stanejovic. Good morning everyone and welcome to MENA Mentors. This is episode 5 and today we'll be talking about how to qualify leads. A lot of B2B companies nowadays, they get a lot of leads on a daily basis. And the big question is always, how do you know if these leads are the right fit for your business and how do you qualify them? So good morning, Luka. He will be joining us for this podcast today.
Morning, everybody. And so qualifying leads it's a big thing particularly with companies that work B2B. First of all, Sasha, what is qualifying leads? I mean, why do you qualify leads and why is it important to qualify them?
Well, basically, when you qualify a lead, what it means is that you want to make sure that this lead is the right fit for your company or for the services that you're offering. Because the problem is that in your business, the resources are limited. You don't have unlimited salespeople or business development people that can take the time to meet every single lead that inquire about your services. So the whole process of qualifying leads is to prevent and to avoid wasting time with the leads that are not the right fit for your company. Not the right fit would mean, for example, that they don't have the budget. It would mean that maybe the requirements they have doesn't fit your company. It might be the fact that they don't have the authority to make a decision. Maybe they don't have a proper need. Maybe they're just inquiring about something that it's not possible for your company to do. And we always need to qualify these leads the proper ways through what we call a qualifying lead score. You want to talk more about this, Luka?
Well, first of all, we'll talk about the lead score eventually. Maybe let's talk about, how you can even start to qualify your lead. So I don't know, personally, I think even before you receive a lead, you should have some sort of minor vetting process. So, I see some of the bigger agencies, for example, will have, when you want to submit a lead on their website, they'll have a budget selection menu and it starts at whatever their minimum budget they work with is. So if you're below that, they're not even going to talk to you. Like, they're not even going to give you their time, because they know how big they are, they know how big the projects are and how big their clients are, so they know that they're not going to work on anything smaller than that. And I think this applies to basically any business. You can, when you set up your forms for somebody to contact you to submit an inquiry, you can already start thinking about how you want to vet those leads and how you want to qualify them. So if, what would be an example? Like, let's say you own a catering company and you cater to parties. And let's say you don't want to cater to really small gatherings. So you only want to take care of stuff that's like, 50 people plus. Then you can have a selection that asks you how many people are going to be at the gathering that's being hosted. And it starts at 50, 50 to 80, 80 to 100, 100 to 150, etc. So I think you can even start before receiving a lead. What do you think after the leads come in, after they've contacted you, and let's say, you forward it to one of your salespeople and you have them call the lead? Do you think a script is important? Would you go through a script? Would you have like a list of check marks or like some questionnaire to fill in? Well, what do you think is the best way to go?
The best way to go, in my opinion, is to have a questionnaire to fill in, because you want to make sure that these leads are properly qualified. And in average, you have 5 things that you need to know about your leads before to qualify them. The first one is to make sure that they have a proper need. They need to have a proper need or proper requirements, because if they don't, they're not qualified. The second is that they need to have the authority to make a decision. You don't want to get to a point where, you set up a meeting with an assistant and then you have to follow up and then get a second or third one with the decision maker at the later stage. Make sure that the person that you will eventually meet or that you're talking to right now at this stage has the authority to make a decision. The problem is that when you have such a lead on the phone or when you have such a lead on email, it's very difficult to ask if they're the decision makers and, if they will be the one making the decisions at the end of the day. So what we usually ask is we usually ask them a simple question that doesn't make them feel bad. It's a question that goes like, other than yourself, who will be the one making a decision for this project? Because you just want to make sure that if you do set up a meeting, if there's anyone else involved in the decision process, you want to make sure that this person comes to the meeting, or you want to make sure that this person is CC'd, in your email sequence. That's number 2. Number 3, you want to make sure that this person has proper knowledge of what they want. Because especially in our industry, building apps and websites. So many times people come in and they tell us, I want to build an app. Okay, what kind of app? I want to build an app similar to Souk. Okay, I mean, what do you mean similar to Souk or any other e-commerce website? It's very important to make sure that the people that come in as lead, they know what they want to build, because you don't want to be wasting time with these people that just woke up this morning, they have an idea, they have a vision, they just want to build an app because apps are cool, and they submitted their requirement. You want to make sure that this person have done the research, they know what they want, they know what they want to build, they know exactly the different features that they want in their app. I mean, we can help them complete this vision, we can help them with suggestions at a later stage to make this app more complete, but they need to come in with proper requirements, because we have this too many times where people just come in and say, I want to build an app. What kind of app? I don't know. And you want to avoid this. The fourth one is, as Luca was mentioning before, is that they need to have a budget, because it depends how big your agency is. But any agencies out there, they have a lot of costs on a weekly or on a monthly basis. And any agency, they have a minimum budget that they want to work with. And if this budget doesn't match the budget of the potential lead, there's not even point of pursuing with this lead. I know it's difficult to ask the budget of a lead, but it has to be done. It has to be done. What we usually say is, you can mention, if in our case, if you're planning to have an app, such as this, on average, going to be around $15,000 to $25,000. You give them a price range. Is this something that fits your budget? If yes, great, let's pursue. If not, well, I don't think that my agency is the right fit for you. If you look at the example for catering that Luca mentioned before, is the same. For your kind of catering, on average, we charge between $2,000 to $3,000 a day. Is this a budget that you had in mind? If yes, great. If not, well, let's not waste time. And the fifth point is this lead the right fit for your company? Is this kind of projects the kind of projects that you want your company to pursue? If it is the right fit, and if it's part of the vision you have for the year, or if it's part of the vision you have when it comes to projects that you want to handle, great. If not, again, not qualified. The big question is, as I said before, we usually give our guys or any business development a kind of questionnaire, to fill in all these different requirements. And this is what we call a lead scoring system. Do you want to talk about this a little more, Luca, and how this works, and how do you put this in place, and why is it so important to put this in place?
Yeah, so the lead scoring system is basically like a bit of a cheat sheet for your business development team, so that they can quite easily and sort of systematically find out whether to pursue a lead after just one phone call. So essentially what we have set up here is they'll go through basically a checklist of things they need to get from a new lead. So it's all the things you mentioned. It would be like their level of decision-making power. So that's, for example, a score out of 10. It's like, are they the CEO of the company, which would be a 10 out of 10? Or are they literally some sort of admin assistant or something that has basically no decision-making power overall in the choice of this project, and then they get like a 1 or a 2. Same thing for the budget. Do they have it or not? Essentially, you end up going through all these important points on your checklist and assigning a score to each point. And then once you add up all the points and you average them out, above a certain level is where you should pursue a lead, and anything below that, you should just drop it at that point, because even though you might end up closing this lead, and even though it might end up being a good lead for your company overall, on average it won't be. And so the time wasted pursuing this lead when you could be pursuing other better leads is just not worth it overall. So the most important thing when you're making your qualifying score questionnaire or whatever, it's important to get questions that are relevant to your business. So you don't want to be checking off things that aren't important for your clients. You need to look at your ideal customer and see what characteristics this person has that are actually essential. Then based on those, you create your questionnaire, and then to actually get the right rating, above which you would pursue the lead, I would say look back at all the best clients you've dealt with, and look back at decent clients you've dealt with that you would deal with again, and then look back at clients or people that you wish, leads you wish you hadn't pursued and you wish you would have dropped at the very start, and then assign the scores, score those leads in retrospect, try to be as objective as possible, try to score them how you would have scored them at the time, and then see, test your system, see if it balances out, see if those unfavored leads fall into the unfavored leads category, if the good ones fall into the good leads category. That's how you'll know that it works. And, once it does work, you give this to your team, you instruct them on how to score everything. You can even automate it, make an Excel sheet, and, they just fill in all the different numbers, and then it sums them up by itself, averages them out. You can even color code it at the end. If the light turns green, pursue the lead. If it turns red, don't. It's super simple once you've got it set up, and it's very, very efficient. So, your salespeople can be making calls, and they don't have to do all this unnecessary thinking. They just see if it's a red or a green cell, and they know whether to pursue or not. So I think it's something it might take a bit of time at the beginning, but it's definitely worth it in the long run, because you get so much more efficient at deciding whether or not to pursue leads, and the quality of your leads just goes way up. So I think it's something anybody should put in place. What do you think? You have anything to add there? Or?
Well, you've covered the lead scoring system pretty well now. The only thing that I want to add to this is, as we talked about it before, these 5 characteristics that you need to go through this lead scoring system to make sure that these leads are properly qualified. And the big question is, how do you get this information out of a potential lead? What kind of questions do you ask in order to extract this information out of this potential lead? So, for example, when we talk about the characteristic number 1, which is the need, common questions would be, what is your goal? What's your long-term vision about this project, for example, so that you get to see what kind of need they have. When it comes to the second characteristic, which is decision making, the questions that I would ask, which is something that I've mentioned earlier, is, apart from yourself, who else will be involved in the decision making of this project? So that you get to know and you get to extract information of who else will be involved without making that particular person that you're on the phone with feel bad, as if they don't have any decision power. Because if you just ask them, who's your boss, or who's the marketing manager, or who's going to take the decision on this, you make them feel inferior, and you don't want that to happen. The third one, which is the budget, the thing is, you don't want to get to a point where you ask them directly, because this is a very commercial approach, and I personally don't like it. If you're on the phone with the potential lead and you just ask them, hey, what's your budget? What we usually do is we usually ask them what kind of apps they would like to build, what kind of website they would like to build, or in your case, whatever industry you're in, or catering, what kind of events do you want to have? And then based on this, you just inform them, from past experience, apps like this, websites like this, events like that usually cost around this much to this much. You give them a range, and based on their reaction, indirectly, what kind of budget they have. Without asking them, based on the reaction they have, what kind of budget they have. So you extract this information out of them. The fourth point, which is requirements. So the question is, do they have proper knowledge of what they want? Do they know exactly the requirements? So in that case, you just ask them questions relevant to their inquiry. For example, if they want to build an app, ask them, what kind of features do you want on this app? How are you planning to monetize this app? If you're talking about an event, what will be the location of the event? How many guests are you expecting? What kind of food do you want? What kind of layout do you want us to put in place? It's just about making sure that this particular lead has the proper knowledge of what is it that they want. Okay? And the last point, which is this lead the right fit for your company? This will vary with different leads that you deal with. In our case, it's based on how the conversation goes. It's based on what kind of long-term vision they have, because in our agency, we don't want to work project by project basis only. The leads or the clients that we work with, we want to make sure that they have a long-term vision. In this case, they want to build an app to start with, or they want to build a website to start with, but they have the long-term vision to eventually, focus on digital marketing. There is the potential of us having a business relationship for the next 2-3 years to come. And these are the leads that we want to target, or that we want to, put more importance on. Anything else that you want to add, Luca?
I think we pretty much covered it. When qualifying leads, most people think it's just about budget, and it's not. There's a lot more things that go into it, and a lot more things that need to be considered, because how many clients have we had who had the budget, but we still wish we had never worked with them, just because if we had vetted them properly, we would have realized that they just weren't right for us. This is something we learned over the years. how to properly qualify and engage every new incoming lead. I guess my final takeaway would be if there's anything that's really, really essential to your agency, something that's, a deal maker or a deal breaker, I think that's something you should consider being very direct about and maybe even putting it as a complete prerequisite to submitting an inquiry. So, I mentioned earlier your company won't work below a certain amount. Well, it's uncomfortable. It's going to lose you inquiries overall, but maybe you should ask for the budget straight up front and let people know, you don't work below a certain amount. Or if you only want to work long term, then maybe you should have a requirement that asks how long in the future they've planned out this business or something. It's a silly example, but ask the important questions basically. Make sure that at least your most important issues are addressed up front and you get started on the right foot.
Okay, thank you, Luca. I guess that covers it all. So I hope that this was insightful for you guys, and we'll see you next week.